the man who tried to nationalize Iran and paid with everything. They called him a dreamer, a stubborn old man, a leader who dared to challenge empires. But in 1951, one decision would shake the world. He didn't start a war. He didn't raise an army. He simply said, Iran's oil belongs to Iran. And for that, he lost everything. Welcome to Echoes and Tales of History by Bright. Please subscribe as we explore the astonishing story of the man who tried to nationalize Iran and paid with everything. This is the story of Mohammad Mossadegh, the man who tried to take back his country's future and became one of the most controversial figures in modern history. A story of power, betrayal, and a nation caught between giants. For decades, Iran sat on one of the most valuable resources in the world: oil, black gold, hidden beneath its soil, powerful enough to fuel empires and shape the future of nations. But there was a problem. Iran didn't control it. Instead, a foreign company, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, held the keys. They drilled the oil. They exported it. They made enormous profits, while Iran received only a small share. Imagine watching your country grow rich in resources, yet your people remain poor. Workers labored under harsh conditions. Communities saw little benefit. And slowly, a quiet anger began to grow, not just against a company, but against a system that made Iran feel like a guest in its own home. Then came Mossadegh, an unusual figure, an elderly aristocrat, often seen in pajamas, known for fainting spells, sometimes delivering speeches from his bed. At first glance, he didn't look like a revolutionary, but appearances can be deceiving, because behind that fragile image was a man of iron will. He believed in one simple idea: Iran must control its own destiny. When he became prime minister in 1951, the people saw hope. Not loud, aggressive hope, but something deeper, a quiet determination that maybe things could finally change. And then, he made his move. Mossadegh announced that Iran would nationalize its oil industry. No more foreign control. No more unequal deals. The oil would belong to the Iranian people. Inside Iran, the reaction was explosive. Crowds filled the streets, cheering, celebrating. For many, this wasn't just politics. It was dignity. It was pride. It was the feeling of taking something back that had been taken for far too long. But beyond Iran's borders, the reaction was very different. Britain was furious. For years, Iranian oil had been one of its most valuable assets. And now, it was gone. But instead of sending troops, they chose another strategy: pressure. A global boycott. Iranian oil was blocked from international markets. Tankers stopped coming. Money stopped flowing. And slowly, the effects began to show. Factories slowed down. Jobs disappeared. Economic strain spread across the country. Inside Iran, the unity began to crack. Some still saw Mossadegh as a hero, but others began to worry. Was this bold move leading the country toward collapse? This wasn't just a local crisis. It was happening during one of the most tense periods in modern history, the Cold War, a time when the world was divided into rival powers, and every country mattered, especially one as strategically important as Iran. To the United States, there was a growing fear. If Iran became unstable, could it fall under communist influence? Could it shift the balance of power? And so, what started as an economic dispute began to turn into something much bigger. Behind closed doors, a decision was made. A quiet, calculated plan to remove Mossadegh from power. It would later be known as Operation Ajax. This was no ordinary operation. It didn't rely on open warfare. Instead, it used influence, money, propaganda, carefully staged unrest. Newspapers began spreading messages. Crowds were encouraged to protest. Tensions were pushed, until the country itself began to feel unstable. At first, the plan failed. But then, everything changed. In August 1953, protests erupted in the streets of Tehran. Crowds clashed. Tension turned into violence. Within days, the government collapsed. Mossadegh was overthrown in a coup supported by the United States and the United Kingdom, and the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, returned to power. Just like that, a leader once celebrated by millions was gone. Mossadegh was arrested, tried, and sentenced to prison. After his release, he was placed under house arrest. For the rest of his life, no speeches, no power, no second chance, just silence. But his story didn't end there. The events of 1953 changed Iran forever. The return of the Shah led to decades of rule, growing dissatisfaction, and eventually, another revolution in 1979. To some, Mossadegh is a hero. To others, a controversial figure in a complex moment in history. But one thing is certain. He dared to challenge the balance of global power, and paid the ultimate political price. So the question is, was he a hero who stood for his people, or a leader who underestimated the forces against him? History still debates, but his story will never be forgotten. If you love powerful untold history like this, subscribe to Echoes and Tales of History by Bright, because the past still has stories left to tell.